Hello and welcome back. Today we are going to discuss another very important and a very beautiful poem. And this poem is The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. This poem has been taken from class 9th NCERT book, Beehive. And I have chosen this poem because it is one of the very inspirational poems that I have come through in recent times, and it is one of my favorite poems also, The Road Not Taken. You can say that this poem has become one of the most recited poem in entire English literature. Anywhere you go, and if you want to quote Robert Frost, the very first poem that will come in your mind is The Road Not Taken. So we are going to study this poem today, and we are going to look over the perspectives by which the poet has explained a very significant philosophy in our life, that is, the decisions that we make in our lives. Now, in this poem, Robert Frost has uh, delivered a very beautiful message, you can say. He has tried to explain that once in our lifetime, we are always subjected to a chance where we are standing on a diversion, you can say, and two roads we will be able to choose. We'll be given some options from where we can decide how to go ahead in our lives and what way to go. So Robert Frost has actually told a very genuine philosophy in this poem that it doesn't matter what road you choose, but whatever you choose at that particular moment, that is going to change the course of your entire life. So this is what the poem is going to be about. So let us start the poem. And before moving ahead to the poem, we'll go to the poet's introduction very first, and we'll get to know who was Robert Frost. So let us go. When we talk about Robert Frost, he was an American poet laureate, and uh, he has two very big achievements. The one is he was the very first of the only five poets who have been given chance to recite a poem at U.S. presidential inauguration. Now, this is a very big feat for people living in America, and especially the poets who are writing and practicing literature in America. Only five poets till date have been invited as president's guest when the inauguration ceremony, you can say, is going on. They are made to recite the poem. So Robert Frost was the first American poet ever to go to the White House and recite his poem. uh, he won the Pulitzer Prize in the year 1924 also for his collection of poems. He was awarded the Pulitzer Prize, which is a very prestigious award for people who are very seasoned in literature, either it is fiction, non-fiction, or poetry. Pulitzer Prizes are offered in very different categories. Likewise, Nobel Prize. So you can say Pulitzer is a Nobel Prize for literature, for especially for literature and poetry. So he has got that in 1924. Now let us move to the poem's introduction. What purpose does the poem serve us, and how the poem came into being? Now, coming to the introduction of the poem, there are certain things that you need to keep in mind while we are going to study this poem. The first one is the poem reflects to a great extent about the choices we make in our lives and how they affect us. As I told you in the beginning, the poem is all about making choices. People live their entire lives thinking about the choices they have made, and at the end, we always say that there would be a time when you will get old and sit somewhere, and then you will think what decisions you made in your life and how they have changed you. So Robert Frost explains a very beautiful philosophy from this poem, that whatever decisions you make in your lives are going to affect you throughout, and those decisions will stay with you even after you are gone and your life has come to an end. Those decisions and how you executed them will always stay with you. So this is the very first philosophy that Robert Frost has reflected in this poem, that the choices we make in our lives always affect us. The second is the poem is from the point of view of a traveler. Now this is a very you can say good imagery employed in this poem. There is a traveler who is narrating the entire poem after many years after he has made the decision. So the poet has decided to make his protagonist as a traveler, and that traveler is going to recite his poem and how he made the choice of which way he should be moving ahead. The third is it is a very important fact about the poem. The poem was not intentionally written as a poem with moral spectrum. See, Robert Frost's poem deal a large amount of motivation, you can say, and moral conjecture, you can say. He describes his poem and in a way that you will always get to learn something from it. People and many of the teachers prescribe his poems when people get depressed, or people need a ray of hope in their lives. Robert Frost's poem come very handy in such situations. People prefer Frost's poem as a very motivational poem for themselves, but this particular poem, which I told you in the beginning, has been one of the most read poem in English literature, and people always categorize it as a, you can say, motivational poem. But this poem was not actually written to motivate, but it was written as a joke to a friend. It is said that Frost's one of the friends made some decision in his life and it went wrong, and for the rest of his life he had to carry on with that decision. So Frost wrote this particular poem as a joke to his life, but people actually drove some motivation from it, and it became one of the most well-read poems in English literature. So this is what the poem's introduction was. So let us move ahead to the poem and see what it has to offer. So look, the poem starts with this line: two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry, I could not travel both. So the place where the poem starts is actually the point where the traveler has reached a part of a yellow wood. Now, yellow wood is a forest where all the leaves have turned yellow, because the season in which this entire setup is made might be autumn season, which actually is a metaphor for the ripened age of a man's life. You can say the old age, or the age where a person has to uh, make some important decisions. So this is the point where the traveler is standing in the forest in a yellow wood, and at that particular point two roads have diverged, and the traveler says, and sorry, I could not travel both. At one time he could not take both of the paths and move ahead in his journey, so he had to decide which particular road he was going to choose. So he says, two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry, I could not travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could. He said, because I was a traveler and I had to make a very important decision, so I stood there very long. I stood there for a very long time and I thought what path I must take. And he said, and looked down one as far as I could. He said that I looked at both of the paths as far as I could, and I tried to make out which particular road will be beneficial for my journey and which path will lead to his destination. So he says that, and be one traveler, long I stood and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. He says that he tried to look as far as he could, but after some point that road bent to some other way, so he could not look very far. He could not make which path was the right path for him. So he says that he tried to look as far as he could, but the road bent in the undergrowth. What happens next? He says, then took the other just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim. Now he makes the decision. He takes the other road just to become a fair person, just to become a person who does justice with both of the paths. So how does he improvise that justice upon both of the paths? Let us move ahead and see in the poem. And having perhaps the better claim, the other path had a better claim than the first path, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Now what happens? When he looks at the both roads that have diverged in the wood, the one road, the very first road that he looked upon, the road was very flat. There was no grass on the road, and it seemed that many people have traveled through that road. And the other road, it was grassy. There were lots of grass in that road, and very few footsteps were there. Very few people had taken that path in their lives. So he said that the other path, which looked a bit grassy and it wanted weir, so he decided that the first path many people had gone through. So he must do some justice with the second path, and he must claim that path for his journey. Though as for that the passing there, he says that I decided that I will pass from the other road, had warned them really about the same. He said that the first road from where many of the people had traveled before, that road had really worn it out, and there were many footsteps on the first road, but the second road needed some footsteps, some needed some wearing, so he decided that he will take the second path. Next he says, And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden back. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how the way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. Now see, this is the point, this is the particular paragraph where the traveler makes his decision on whether which path he will continue his journey on. He says, that morning both of the paths were laying equally in front of me, and I had the chance to take the either of the path, and nobody was going to question me. But it was me who had to make the decision, and so I made the decision that I will go on the second path, which was a little bit of grassy and wanted weir, and I left the first path for some other day. If there comes a chance in my life that I again get to go in that forest and I meet the same place, I will go on the first path some other day. And he left it for that day, and he decided to go on the second path. Although he says, I doubted if I should ever come back. He says that there is always a doubt in my mind that that maybe I will never get the second chance to ever come back and choose the other way. So it was a kind of one-time decision that whatever he chooses in this journey, this particular path is going to decide where he is going to reach. So he says that although I knew the fact that I might never get a second chance to come here, I will choose the second path just to become a little bit of just with both of the paths. So this is how he makes the decision, and he leaves the first road for some other day, and he says that he will come back again some other time and take that road, and he takes the second path. Now, this is the last paragraph of the poem, and where he culminates the entire decision he has made. He says, I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. He says, whatever path I chose, I might be, if I live so long, I will be sitting somewhere, and with a sigh, with a sense of relief, I will be telling that to some people, to young children who will be listening to me. He says that I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere many years after he has made this decision. And these three are my favorite lines, all-time favorite lines. He says, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. He said that on that day, I will be telling many people about this journey. That on that day, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. I took the road which many people had not traveled. Not many people know uh, what what uh, what things you will get when you cover that road, when you go through that road. So he says that not many people know about my journey, and I will be telling this after so many years that I took the road, the one less traveled by, where many few people have gone, and that has made all the difference. And that particular road, that particular decision that I made that day, that has made all the difference in my life. Whatever I am today, whatever I could have become, whatever I have become, all this has been a result of what I chose that day. So he says that that particular decision has made all the difference in his lives. So this is what the poem is all about, the road not taken. He says the central philosophy of this poem is that whatever decisions you make in your lives, when the time comes, it becomes very crucial sometimes that you make a decision that is going to change the entire course of your life. Now, when it comes to education, when your parents ask you what particular stream do you want to study, now what happens? Some students love arts, or some students want to study photography, humanities, but they come under pressure and they say they will continue with science or whatever they did not want to do, and that particular thing that they choose that day becomes how they are going to move ahead with their studies. And the same happens when we reach the second stage of our life, when we are asked to marry someone, when we are made to choose a partner, and sometimes due to family pressure we just agree what our parents say. Now these are the decisions, these are some crucial decisions that change our lives. So we should be very careful while choosing these things. So this is what the poem was all about, The Road Not Taken. I hope you have liked this poem, and you can clear your doubts in the comment section. I will be always ready for that. Thank you.